Welcome to this small tutorial, or maybe even big tutorial, how we can deploy our Node.js project that works with MySQL databases. The issue why I'm doing is there are not many tutorials out there which actually demonstrate deploying it on an AWS server. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's just have a quick check at the project that I'm having. My project is just basically like backend. That is everything with Node.js. Server.js is my main entry file, and client is my frontend. And later on, we then gonna create a build version of my React frontend here, which we're gonna serve the files from. So I think let's get started. So what is it that we're gonna do and deploy on the server? First, we're gonna create an AWS instance. Then we're gonna install all the required resources, which is then Node.js. Node.js comes then along with npm, so we can install all dependencies. And then we're also gonna install the latest version of MariaDB. And be aware of it has to be the latest version above 10.1. The issue why that is so is first after 10.1 did MariaDB actually support JSON, and maybe depending on what you did with the latest Node.js or something like that, it might not work on your server. For Windows people also, in order to connect to the server, you need SSH. So for Windows people, I would say go ahead and download inside your App Store. Windows Store. There we go, Microsoft Store, yeah. So go ahead, search for Ubuntu and install that one, so you get an Ubuntu terminal you can work from, because SSH is natively not supported by Windows. There are additional softwares you can install, but they are rather difficult to use. Mac people and Linux people, you have it by default supported, so it's all good for you guys. So what is it? How do we log in again? Yeah, go to AWS Educate, log in with your user account, then you go to My Classrooms, go to Classroom, then you get here to Worker Room, then you press here on the AWS console, and then you get to the AWS console with your education user account. Then we go to services here, compute EC2, and then EC2, that is the AWS service for servers. So we're going to connect to a server now. I'm going to press here on launch instance. And then we want to scroll down here to Ubuntu server 18.04, select. We want to go here with the free tier eligible, which means your first 12 months of AWS, you get this one for free. Then we press, instead of review and launch, we have to go here to next until we can edit the port range, because here now configure security group here in the top. Here, like SSH again, we can connect to the server using port 22 from whichever IP address. But because we're also serving this server as a web server, so we need to serve websites, we also need to open ports for our websites. And that is then usually port 80. So if we press add rule and just go here to HTTP, it pre-configures for us a port that we can use for web servers. So that is port range 80, and everyone can access then the web server. So now we can press on review and launch. Yes, choose an existing key pair. I already have a key pair. And I acknowledge, and I go ahead and launch the instance. So now the instance is going to be launched. What we need now here, after we have the instance here, we need the public IP address, because that is the one that we need in order to connect to our web server. So, or actually no, it's not that one. We need the public DNS here, sorry. So the public DNS, we copy this link, right? And then we go to Ubuntu, and when like Ubuntu, or not Ubuntu, but your terminal on your computer. So Mac people just open your normal terminal, Linux people also, and Windows people open Ubuntu, so you get a terminal like this. Now the thing is, you have to create your key pair. I already have mine, and then we need to connect to the server. If you're unsure how to do that, you very likely find tutorials on YouTube how to do that, how you can connect to. But my key pairs, I got them all inside this directory. So I have the AWS -KEA-2-PEM that I'm going to use today. And then to connect to the server, I'm going to write ssh-i AWS-KEA-PEM. And then I type Ubuntu, add and paste the link that I just copied before. This is the default SSH connection command line that AWS gives. So it has to be the SSHI, then the key file you use in order to connect. Then Ubuntu is your default username that you have for your key file, and then add the link that you copy paste before. I'm going to hit enter. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. And now am I connected to the web server? We can see that by doing an ls-la, which lists us all files in the directory. If I go to the very top level, doing a cd/, and then once again we can see these are all files from a Ubuntu server. So currently I am connected to the web server. If you have issues getting to this point, you could also maybe go with Google Cloud or something like that. As long as you get to the point where you can connect to a server, you find many tutorials on how to do that, because now is the part, or now actually comes the part where you don't find a lot of tutorials how to actually set up your whole project correctly with a Node.js MySQL backend, which is not very common. So what is it that we need? We need, first of all, Node.js. So we just go to Google Node.js, Ubuntu. Then we come here to the link and we see here the command line for Ubuntu. So Node.js 14 using Ubuntu. So I just go ahead and copy this. I'm going to also post this one later on in the comments, this comment. So I go ahead and I paste that one. While that just does, or is going on, we're just going to wait a little bit until that's finished. Okay. Next thing, we also have to go here with sudo apt-get install y Node.js. So the next thing we got to do is we got to upgrade all repositories and apps that we have. So we have to say sudo apt update. Everything is now updated. And now we have Node.js on the server. The next thing that we have to do is we have to add mariadb. Again, we could go ahead and just say sudo apt install mariadb, but that is not enough because that gives us the version 10.1. Again, we need at least version 10.4, otherwise we might get issues. So I have a code snippet here that I'm going to put in the comment below too, and I'm just going to paste everything in here. Let me just see what just happened here. After this, do you want to continue? Yes. Okay, so I have that one. Then I continue with my next line. That one is good too. Then I'm gonna continue with the third line. Then the fourth, sudo apt update once again. And now we have updated the packages so we can fetch the latest one and not the one that is officially online. Okay, all good. How can we check that we got 10.4 now? Well, we just got to say sudo MySQL, and we can see here that we directly connected to MariaDB, and we have server version 10.4. That is everything we need, so just go ahead and exit again. Next step that we got to do is we got to secure the MySQL installation. Because the default setup is not secure, so we're just going to go ahead and say sudo mysql_secure installation. And for those people who don't know what MariaDB is, again, MariaDB is the same as MySQL. It is just a free open source version, if you want to say it like that. Very shortly. So enter current password for root. We're gonna have none for that. Switch to Unix authentication. So now I think it's just about pressing enter, 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 enter until, or yeah, it's not about pressing enter. Sorry about that. So enter current password for root, enter for none. So switch to Unix socket authentication, yes. Change the root password, let's do it, yes. And I'm gonna type hello for my root password. Remove anonymous user, yes. Disallow root login remotely. That is also yes. Remove test database, yes. And reload privilege tables now, yes. So now I have the user name root with password hello that I can later on use to connect my database to. The last thing we need for one of the major installations is to install NGINX. So what is NGINX? NGINX is a web server that we need in order to serve our files. So you can just go ahead and type in sudo apt install nginx, and that just also later on serves as the main setup for the whole server to say what should be served to the website, which files should be located where, and so on and so forth. So here once again sudo apt install nginx, yes. And while this is then downloading, go back to your instance and now copy paste the IP address you have from here. Because this one we're going to use now to check if NGINX installation was successful. So NGINX has been installed. And now if we type in this IP address in the the address bar, we can see that we are connected to our server here, and NGINX is successfully showing us the default NGINX page. But now we don't want to have the default NGINX page, and we also need our project somehow. So what we're going to do now is, because of the installation of NGINX, we got new directories. And these new directories are located at var. And then we can see here we have something here, www. So this is the default web directory where you usually should serve your files from. And then we have here the directory called HTML. This is the default directory, but we're not going to use that one. We're going to create our own directories, which we're going to serve from. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and you have to upload your project to GitHub. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to clone it inside our repository. So git clone and then our whole project here. Oh yeah, and it has to be done with sudo. So, well, the issue for me is just like that my directory has a really long name. I'm just gonna rename it because as we can see here, it is free manned and so on and so forth. So what I'm gonna do is free mandatory assignment. I'm just gonna call it project. that of course has to be done with sudo. Sudo, for those who don't know what that is, sudo means execute this command as the administrator. So sudo, su is for super user, do. So now I can see that my file here is called project. I'm going to go inside project now, and I can see that I have my two files, the backend and client. So backend is everything Node.js related, client is everything React related. First, we just want to go ahead and do the client stuff. So cd client lsla, and we got all our packages. And as usual, we have to do an npm install first, because we need to install all dependencies of this project. And of course, again, we have to execute this with sudo, because it requires elevated access. All right. This might take some time, so I'm just going to go ahead and open my previous project here, because there are just some minor things that we soon need from there. Okay, so we got that installed now. Now with React, when you develop programs in React, and most probably or most likely you use create React app, then you get like this default structure with source and public. These two files or these two directories are used during development, but we need now a build directory. So it's not that we run somehow the server in the backend to serve the files, because that would be stupid, because they're just static files. We're going to create a folder that has everything kind of prepared to just ask for the files, and it serves it as a React. So to do that, we're just going to type here sudo npm build. Oh yeah, sudo npm run build. And now it's going to go ahead and take all the React files and wraps it inside the build directory, which is then optimized for production websites. Okay, so that one should work now. And we can now go ahead and try to serve the React project here instead of this default NGINX file. So in order to do that, we then have to edit the NGINX config file. And that is then done by going over to, give me a couple of seconds. So we're going to go over to, actually let's just do directly editing it. So we can say sudo, because we need administrator rights again. Nano, for those people who don't know what Nano is text editor inside the terminal. Because again, we don't have any graphical user interfaces, so this is the only way we can edit files in here. And then it's slash etc slash nginx slash sites available slash default. And there's no dot because this file has no file extension. So now we just hit enter, and we can see here we got a default NGINX configuration file. And there's a lot of things going on here. What we don't need is all of these lines. I'm very positive about that. There's probably a command here or key combination to delete this faster, but I'm a little bit lazy to Google that now. And all of this is also stuff we don't need. I'm just gonna, the reason why I'm deleting all of this is just that we have a better overview of all the configurations file that we're gonna work with. So we have a global overview of them all. these files. Just going to remove them. Again, you don't have to do that. I just do that because we then have a better overview. So, what is it that we have to change here? First of all, we got the server here. The server is listening to port 80. So that is what currently, do I still have it? Yeah, currently like port 80. This IP address is the same thing as the IP address with port 80 because port 80 is the default web address. So that doesn't change here. And that is the beautiful thing here about NGINX. We can say which directory to serve at which from which port. So now in this configuration area or block, we say listen to port 80. This is an additional one, just NGINX stuff. And then we go down here to root var www html. So as you might remember before, we served the website. We want to serve the website from another directory, and that directory was project/client. So we go to the project, then to the client, and then to the build directory. And inside the build directory, it should then go from looking at a file that is called index, then to index.html, index.ht, and so on. So here you can define what is the main entry file. Inside the build directory, Rect created a file called index.html, so we can leave this server name, we can leave that, and all good. So to save this file with Nano, because now this is the Nano text editor, we can see here a lot of commands down here. All these arrows that goes up, that means that is the control key. So in order to exit here, we have to hit the control key plus X at the same time. So that I'm going to do now. Save modified buffer. I'm just going to hit the Y key as like for yes. And then now I'm just going to hit enter. So that file has now been saved. And the next thing we got to do is we got to reload NGINX to make these configurations effective. So how do we do reload? Reload NGINX? That is done by doing sudo service nginx restart. And now if we reload this page, we can see that I have my Rect app going on here. Of course, there is no content here because the backend is currently not working or up and running. So we can also see in the console that we get here arrows that, yeah, okay, we don't even get arrows right now, but it's not working. So the next thing we have to do then is we go out to the backend. So cd up, and then we go to the backend, and now we're going to install here the dependencies. Most likely you guys also used bcrypt for password encryption. We have to install additional packages if you use bcrypt. So first of all, we have to install sudo apt install build essential. And this is just installing all essential tools for the bcrypt algorithm. And not only bcrypt algorithm, but so bcrypt can work with NodeJS. Okay, all good. And then we can go ahead and install the dependencies for the backend, because our backend is also a Node.js application which has npm dependencies. So I'm going to go ahead and say sudo npm install. And now very, very important, it's not only sudo npm install, but we have to add the unsafe-perm ls flag or attribute behind it. Because of some bcrypt configuration, just running sudo npm install will give you errors, and unsafe-perm ls gives allows you then to install the dependencies with bcrypt along without giving you errors or that it would fail. And here we already go. we have bcrypt issues once again. So let's check what we got here. Yeah. So let's just quickly Google that. So once again, bcrypt is like really messy to install because it has so much dependencies. And yeah, the thing is, I actually solved it before, but it is just all the time the same thing with bcrypt. It's like very good algorithm, but it's a pain in the ass to install. Okay, let's try it once again with the essential build tools. Yeah, we have those installed, and still we get a sudo npm install, we get a bcrypt error. Oh no, actually not. Yeah, then I don't know what just happened. So try without the unsafe-perm ls flag attribute, or try to install it twice with sudo npm install. Or just follow the video one-to-one, the steps I just did before. So now we have all the essential stuff installed, dependencies installed. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, okay, got it. I was in the wrong directory now again. So still we don't have the, yeah, we don't have the dependencies. And now I'm getting again an issue here because I don't have sudo. And yeah, sudo again. Okay, yeah, now I got it. Sorry about that, guys. It was that we need the flag unsafe-perm, but without the ls. Probably just a typo I had in my notepad. So sudo npm install unsafe-perm, that is the command line you need in order to install if you have it with bcrypt. So what you're gonna do is, first of all, you go and do the sudo apt install build essentials. And then when you have that, then you can go ahead and do the sudo sudo npm install unsafe-perm. So now we have all dependencies here. If you then followed along, or if you then also have next and objection, then we now first of all need to do migrations. So how is that done again? That is with 1 second. We need to install next globally so we can run next commands. So again, sudo npm install next, and then with the G attribute. So that goes ahead and installs next globally, so we can use it also just with next. So now next migrate latest. And we get the issue here, database is not configured, and that is totally expected. So my configuration file is the db-config.js, as we can see up here. And that is something I'm going to create. So sudo nano db, wait, which one am I right now? The backend, yes. So I'm going to go inside the config, ls-la. And here we have the db-config template.js and keys template.js. So I'm first going to create the db-config file, sudo nano db_config.js. And again, with nano, the text editor, you can also open a file that doesn't exist yet. It will be then empty, and then you can type in it, and it will then be saved after you did some edits to it. So now this file is empty. And what is it that is the setup of my file here? That is going to be looking like this. So the host is usually then 127. Database is something that I'm going to create now, or one of the next steps. So I'm just going to call it a project. That is the database name I'm going to have. Then the user is root, and if you remember correctly, my password is hello. To exit and store it again here, so the arrow up again is control. So I hit the control X key, then type the Y and enter. So now going inside here, we can see ls-la, and we got the whole thing working here. So the next step that is also missing is the keys template. That is the one I use to store my email keys and all that stuff. And I'm thinking just going to take the templates and just take it as it is, because I'm not going really deeply now into setting up email and all that stuff. So keys.js, and that has to be done with sudo. So this is the renaming command. And now I can see I have the keys and the db-config.js file that I wanted and need. The db-config file is now configured to use a database called project, which doesn't exist yet. So that is something we have to do now to create this database. How do we create database again? We just go inside MySQL, and that is done with sudo MySQL. That connects us there automatically to MySQL. And then we say show databases. So show databases, there we go. So these are the current databases that we have, but we want to create a database. And that is done with a command line like this one. I'm also setting the character set and COLLATE because I just think like that is much more better to do so. But create database project should also be enough. So my database is called project. I hit enter, and now I can exit because now I have the database and I have the configuration files. So now I can try again to run the next command. Next migrate latest. I run it, and ta-da, it was successful. That means now all the tables are existing inside my database. After I've done the migrations, I also want some boilerplate data that I can use, work with, and maybe also display. So that is done with seeds. If you have done or used seeds, then follow this next step. Otherwise, just ignore it. So now next seed run. That populates now the tables with some mockup data, and I have that now running. So just taking everything once again, we have the dependencies installed. we have the database set up and connected, and we have created tables using migrate, and we put in, or we populated it with mockup data. The next step so now is how we then actually use the backend in connection with the front end. Like, how do we actually display the data from the backend to the front end? Because right now the backend is not even running because we haven't set anywhere nodemon, node.js or something like that to run the server file that we have in the top. And that is also something you simply don't do just like that you run the server file, because again, we currently only have this website that is running under the build directory. And the build directory is in another directory as this one. So we can't go somewhere up here because this is the main. Like, if we go here in the main directory, we are in the build, and we can't go somewhere around or out here. So what we then gonna do is we're gonna tell NGINX. So again, NGINX is this web server manager, if you want to say it like that, to tell NGINX that it should serve our website under a specific, or our backend from a specific directory. In order to do that, we then once again go ahead and edit our NGINX configuration file. So that is again done with sudo nano etc. NGINX sites available, and then default. Now we're going to open it. And we then have here this location. So what is this location block? What does that do? It tells NGINX to do specific things when somebody hits this endpoint. So for me, I'm gonna, like, my whole Node.js project is built up that it is a REST API, so I'm serving all the Node.js files as API with JSON and all that stuff, and I want that to be available or accessible within the API directory. So that is then done with going here and saying API. Just gonna delete, oh, that was not good. Location / API, and then this. And we can also remove the triuri here. So now inside this directory is everything Node.js backend related configuration. First of all, when we run our Node.js, you have most probably specified a port it should run from, maybe port 9000, 8080, something else, then maybe 3000 or something like that. And that is also what we then have to say here, that all the files from Node.js, when we run it now with node server.js, or maybe you guys are used to nodemon server.js, then usually when you have that on your computer, you can access then the Node.js backend with 127.0.0.1, double point 8000 or 8080. That is how you can access your Node.js backend here then. And we just have to proxy this address out that it is available to our frontend. So we have kind of to redirect requests. And that is then done with proxy _ pass http // 127.0.0.1. And for me, the port that I specified from my Node.js project was 8080. So again, the port here could be very different for you guys, but for me, it's just like 8080. And then also my Node.js project is that configured that everything is served from an API endpoint here too. So maybe if you don't have that and you already have API endpoints in the beginning, then ignore what I just did. But I just know I have my here from API. So then I have all of this. The next thing I have to do is just proxy no cage. Most probably in a real production website, you don't want to do this because this removes caching. But now, because we're still like in deployment phase and testing deployment phase, we don't want to have any cache from the server side. Otherwise, maybe it's changes that we do will not be effective. And then expires of, we also going to have that, and proxy cache bypass 1. So these 3 lines are just done to disable cache. And that's it then. So now again, we can go ahead and save this file with Control X, then press the Y key and then hit Enter. We have to restart NGINX server again. And that is done with, just give me a second. So that is once again done with sudo service nginx restart. So nginx is now restarted, and everything that we're now serving from our address here will be available in our front end at /API. But we're not quite done there. Since we all most definitely had core issues in the beginning, we also have configured our project to use cores. And now if we go ahead and look inside my server file, so sudo nano server.js, and I scroll a little bit down, I can see here that this block, this is my cores configuration that I have. And the backend only allows requests from websites which are coming from this domain, HTTP localhost 3000. But this domain is not part, like this domain or my current IP address that we're going to serve now the deployment from is not part of that one. So we have to add that. Let me just quickly check how do I add multiple, because I think that should just be with a comma. So HTTP localhost NodeJS express allow access control allow origin multiple. Okay, these guys are going a little bit all in here. And it looks like yeah, okay, this looks a little bit more difficult. Then let's disregard it. I'm just going to change it completely to a version that works. So I'm just going to insert here my HTTP here. So now my backend is also accepting requests from this one, from this IP address. So go ahead again, save it with Control X, Y, and Enter. And now, if everything was correct and we didn't miss anything out, we can actually go ahead and say node server.js to run the server. So server is running on port 8080. And if I refresh here, we can see that I have my files, my data from the database exactly. So these are the mockup data that I created. I can even go ahead, log in with Acuna, and then hello. And now I could also go ahead and create a post, and I could log out. Even though this now works, it's still not a perfect environment, because on a server, you simply don't run the server just using Node or NodeMon. For server, you want to use something more optimized to run, and that is in PM2. PM2 is a production process manager for Node.js, which means it runs the server files that you decide for yeah, in the production mode. So when it crashes, it's not like shuts down the server instantaneously, and you get an overview of the resources that are used. So now, for example, yeah, so in that case, we then have to install PM2, and that is then done with npm install PM2, and then the G for global, so the G attribute. And again, you guessed it, sudo. We need the sudo command before it, because we are installing files to the server. Okay, now everything's good. Now we can say PM2 start and then server.js. So PM2 start is replacing nodemon on node server.js. Now when we hit enter, we can see that the server is now up and running, and we can also see that the status is online, how much the CPU is used, memory, Ubuntu, and all that stuff. If we want to have future times check how the status is, because this is just a one-time print, we then can do a PM2 ls that gives us updated versions. So we can see that CPU usage of our backend web server is currently 5.1% of the whole CPU that is available. Now, once again, I just go ahead and check. So refresh, and all my files are available. And now I could even go ahead and sign up. So guys, this is everything you need to deploy. You got your backend, you got your front end, and everything works.